Offred also thinks about the time that Moira was with her at the Red Center. So one day Moira just shows up. Offred is pleased to see her friend there. And there's quite the dichotomy between Moira and Offred. They really are opposites. When it comes to Moira, she symbolizes rebellion. When it comes to Offred, she really symbolizes complacency, being passive. So at one point, Moira plans an escape. She's very determined to get out of the Red Center by any means necessary. And Offred thinks, Moira, don't. I couldn't stand the thought of her not being there with me, for me. So Offred is being quite selfish at this point. Now, she might be able to help Moira escape. She might be able to escape with Moira, but instead of planning with her, all she can think about is that if Moira leaves, she will be completely alone. And that's a very selfish thought for her to have. So it doesn't really occur to her to try to plan an escape along with Moira. Offred remembers the time when she was at the Red Center, and the aunts would play a recording of the Bible for them. And part of it was, "Blessed are the meek, blessed are the silent." I knew they made that up. I knew it was wrong. And they left things out too, but there was no way of checking. So the correct quote is, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." But in Gilead, that has been changed to, "Blessed are the silent." So Offred is aware that there are certain things in the Bible that have been manipulated, that have been changed, right, to reinforce Gileadian doctrine. And this is also another reason, as I mentioned, why they keep the Bible under lock and key. They don't want anyone reading it, and they don't want anyone knowing to what extent it has been changed. And then further on for the ceremony, we have, again, the handmaid being objectified. Serena sits behind her. Offred is kneeling on the floor, and she says, possibly she'll put a hand on my shoulder to steady herself, as if I'm a piece of furniture. She's done it before. So this is how Serena Joy treats her sometimes, like furniture, by using her as a way to steady herself. And then we have the commander who walks in wearing his black uniform. And the commanders, of course, are associated with the color black, the color of power, of authority. It's also a very threatening color. And she says about him, he looks us over as if taking inventory. So again, it's the patriarchy, the man who owns the entire household. He owns the people within the household. So everyone there is his possession. Everyone depends on him. Offred even wonders, what would happen to all of them, to the Marthas, to Nick, to her, if the commander was not there? What would happen? And the Bible is a very important part of the ceremony. The ceremony begins by a reading from the Bible, and it's always the same thing that is read, and it's the story that was the epigraph right at the very beginning of the novel, the one about Jacob and Rachel and Leah. And they say as well, the Bible is kept locked up, the way people once kept tea locked up, so the servants wouldn't steal it. It is an incendiary device. Who knows what we make of it if we ever got our hands on it? We can be read to from it by him, but we cannot read. Our heads turn towards him. We are expectant. Here comes our bedtime story. So the comment about the bedtime story is reminiscent of what she thought about the news anchor. Again, this refers to them being children. The audience are children. Also, why is the Bible kept locked up? Well, first of all, the women are not allowed to read. Only the aunts are allowed to read, even the wives cannot. So the Bible is kept under lock and key. And why is it called an incendiary device? So something that catches fire. Why do they refer to the Bible in this way? And that's because if someone did manage to read the Bible, they might find information in there which contradicts the official doctrine that Gilead has set forth. So there would be a potential for controversy there, a potential for rebellion. So the Bible could be used as a source of rebellion. So only certain people are allowed to read from it. Of course, those are men, and in the household, it's the commander who reads from the Bible, no one else. This is how Offred describes the ceremony itself. Above me, towards the head of the bed, Serena Joy is arranged, outspread. Her legs are apart. I lie between them, my head on her stomach, her pubic bone under the base of my skull, her thighs on either side of me. She, too, is fully clothed. My arms are raised. She holds my hands, each of mine and each of hers. This is supposed to signify that we are one flesh, one being. What it really means is that she is in control of the process and of the product, if any. So Serena Joy does control what happens to a certain degree. And when Offred says she's in control of the product, that means if she has a child, then it's going to be Serena Joy's child to raise. So the entire process is dehumanizing. Offred simply lies between Serena Joy and the commander. She is nothing but a womb at this point. She's a vessel, nothing more. So the process, there's no emotion involved, there's no warmth, there's definitely no love. It's cold, it's detached, it's clinical. And Offred tries to convince herself that this is not rape. This is what she tries to think. But in reality, Gilead has institutionalized sexual assault through the ceremony. Okay, that's what they've done. And for Serena Joy and the commander, this is all about duty. It's something that must be done every single month in order to ensure that as many children are born as possible. And Offred does wonder at the end when Serena Joy is crying after the ceremony is over, the commander has left, and she does wonder which of us is it worse for, her or me. So she does have a certain amount of feeling for Serena Joy and how difficult it is for her to see her husband in this situation. And also Serena Joy feels the disappointment that she has failed in some way by not being able to bear a child of her own. So if a woman is infertile, that is considered to be her failure. Although of course it could be the man who was infertile, but still it's the woman who is blamed nonetheless. And on page 50, Offred thinks about Serena Joy and her accomplishments, about the fact that she used to make a lot of speeches promoting a very conservative values for families and for women. And Offred thinks she doesn't make speeches anymore. She is speechless. She stays in her home, but it doesn't seem to agree with her. How furious she must be now that she's been taken at her word. So Serena Joy used to be an activist in her own right. An activist, of course, for a very conservative form of family life, but an activist nonetheless. And now that she's created this ideal society that she wanted, she finds that she's extremely uncomfortable within it. Serena Joy is not the type of person who likes to be without a voice. She likes to voice her opinions. And now that she is in this ideal environment, which is really not an ideal environment at all, she's extremely upset, she's angry, she's irritable, she's not fulfilled with the life that she has. And there's also the comment that was made earlier about the scarves and the type of scarf that Serena Joy would knit compared to what the other wives would knit. And Offred commented that there was always a certain amount of complexity to her scarves that the other wives didn't have. So Serena Joy is someone who likes to be challenged, but in this society there are no challenges for her. It's a very empty life. At this point in the novel, around page 118, Offred begins to experience more and more despair. So she says, "It's a lack of love we die from. There's nobody here I can love. All the people I could love are dead or elsewhere. Who knows where they are or what their names are now? They might as well be nowhere, as I am for them. I too am a missing person." So she has lost everyone that was close to her in her life. She's lost her best friend Moira. She doesn't know where Moira is. She has lost her daughter. So she has seen a picture of her daughter dressed in white. So she knows that her daughter has been adopted by a commander and his wife and is being raised in Gilead, but she has no contact whatsoever with her. And what's chilling about this is that she also realizes that her daughter at this point in time has probably forgotten her, and that hurts her deeply. And then there is her mother, who is, again, she does not know what happened to her mother at this point in time. And of course, her husband, Luke. She often imagines what might have happened to him because she has no real idea. She fantasizes at one point that he might be dead. he might be in prison, or perhaps he has escaped. But in reality, she has absolutely no idea. More symbols that show up are the eggs and the moon. So often we see Offred eating eggs. So why eggs? Why not something else? Well, eggs symbolize fertility. They symbolize birth. So that's why we often see eggs during Easter, right, to symbolize the rebirth of Christ. And also the moon, it's the same thing. The moon symbolizes birth and fertility. The moon is a cycle, and it relates, of course, to Offred's menstrual cycle. So everything in her life is determined by her menstrual cycle, when the ceremony takes place. And every month, of course, when she has her period, she thinks, I'm not pregnant, this is another failure. So eggs and moon are something that show up fairly often in the novel, and they are important symbols. So the ceremony is a ritual, and then whenever a handmaid gives birth, there is also another type of ritual that is performed. So all of the other handmaids nearby are picked up in a birthmobile, and the birthmobile, of course, is red, and that's significant. And they're taken to the home of the couple whose handmaid is going into labor. And everyone hopes, of course, that the baby will be a healthy one, that it won't be an unbaby or a shredder. Those are disposed of. They want the baby to be a keeper. And what these rituals serve to do is really enforce the social hierarchy. And it also dehumanizes the handmaids. Of course, they exist only for one purpose, for reproduction. And Offred remembers what it is that caused the high infertility rate to begin with, and also helped to cause the unbabies. There was a lot of pollution, the air and the water, a lot of pesticides were being used. There was an earthquake, and that unfortunately caused the explosion of a nuclear facility, so there was a lot of nuclear radiation. And there was also a strain of syphilis that was very virulent, and that also raised the infertility rate.